Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to our LPCS community conversation. We are so excited to be able to connect with our community, especially our volunteers. We miss everybody so much. We miss seeing you on site, although we feel very lucky to have seen many of you at meal drop-offs and dropping off amazing goods and just sending us like wonderful words of encouragement. And we really hope that we're going to be able to start seeing you on site in the very near future. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the presentation. We are so lucky to have a great lineup of panelists here this evening. We're going to have Lydia Murray, who is the incoming board president of LPCS. Andy Perez, who is our interim executive director, Jamila Chaudhry, who is our volunteer coordinator. And then we've got some wonderful community partners here. We have Robin Hammond from the Lincoln Park Chamber of Commerce, Ian Tobin from the Old Town Merchants and Residents Association, and Cheryl Potts from the Kennedy Forum. So please, drop us a line in the chat box. Make sure, if you want to communicate with everybody that you click all panelists and participants. And also feel free at any time to drop a question in the chat box, and we will get to those at certain parts of the presentation. But for now, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Lydia to kick us off.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to virtually see everybody here. I last week finished up as an interim executive director, and I'm so happy that Andy Perez has stepped into that role. In July, I'll be heading up the board, acting as board president. Not acting, I guess I will be board president. And I wanted to talk with you. I was going to kick off our conversation just to give a little background and updates on sort of what's been happening at LPCS over the last several months with our guests, with our staff, and kind of get everybody up to speed. And then I'm going to hand it off to Andy to talk about what we're doing now and also looking forward over the next few months. So I think we have a presentation. We have some slides that I can speak to because pictures are really powerful. In sort of after the initial shock of COVID, and sort of locking our shelter down, really like limiting the movement. Prior to the pandemic, guests could sign in and out and come and go. We really did have to shelter all of our guests in place. Many of the guests lost their jobs. It was, this initial shock. But, moving into April, we really had a couple of big things happen. One, we did have one first positive case of a staff member who came down with COVID. And as a result of that, we did massive testing of all of our guests and all of our staff to see kind of what the infection rate or exposure was. We are very fortunate that we had one of the lowest COVID occurrences of any shelter in the city. We only had 4 staff members who tested positive. They're all fine. Completely fine. A couple of them had symptoms, a couple were totally asymptomatic, but we were very lucky that none of our guests were infected or had COVID, and the city was really surprised by that. We were probably the only shelter where the guests, the actual residents, didn't have COVID-19. So we're very fortunate about that. We're grateful that our staff, who are on site every day, are recovered and fine. And I think that speaks a little bit to the precautions that we took, not having a lot of movement, not having volunteers come in, really sort of limiting what staff could leave the facility for and caring for them. One of the things that was tricky was we had to figure out, how do we take new guests into the shelter? We had people leave and actually get housed in this time or actually move back with family. And so it was really tricky to figure out how do we take new folks in with this lockdown situation as beds become available. And we had to figure out testing, right? We all like testing is the big hurdle. And we were fortunate to partner with Innovative Express on Fullerton and Ashland. And Dr. Kari was so gracious in like getting us in to have our guests tested. So any new intake guests that we have, we test them and we keep them in isolation until we get their test results back. And we actually did catch one guest who tested positive, who was intake for us, and we were able to move them to Safe Haven, which is the place in the city where they have folks recover who don't need to be hospitalized that are positive. I think Andy's actually in the space where we do isolation. We turned our top floor of the shelter into an isolation unit. There are restrooms and a kitchen there, and that's where folks sort of hang out until like test results come back. We're seeing that they're taking less and less time. It used to be, 3 or 4 days. Now it's taking a really short time. The other thing that happened in May was that the city, you may have heard about this, the city opened up a hotel or used a hotel, 166 on State Street, and they went to all the shelters in the city, including LPCS, and they looked for the most vulnerable folks who may have diabetes, who are over 60, who have comorbidities, and assessed them and actually made hotel rooms available. And so we had 9 LPCS guests picked up by the city. This is the picture of them on the bus, headed to the fancy hotel on State Street. We still are doing the case management and helping those guests get housed. The city certainly isn't going to pay for the hotel for forever. So those are people are certainly prioritized to get permanent supportive housing and to have stable housing coming out of there. And we're still in contact with them. But that's been a great partnership with the city. And I will definitely, sing praises to the city with how much support and communication and their effort to help the most vulnerable and to help our guests and the populations that we serve. They really have gone above and beyond. So also in May, we began transitioning to a new interim executive director, who I'm going to introduce in just a minute. I stepped in and did an interim. I thought it was going to be just a short, 4-ish months kind of executive search, and it turned into much more than that. But I'm very grateful that Andy is taking over. What we've done most recently, the last, I would say 2 to 3 weeks, is everybody entered into phase 3. And so we had to sort of change the lockdown rules for our guests. Before, we would only allow them to go outside with supervised walks, socially distant, wearing a mask with staff. Now we're allowing them to just go out once a day for an hour to stores, get some fresh air. We've always allowed guests who are working, and there are some who are working in grocery stores, et cetera, who are essential workers. They've always been allowed to come and go, but we really have loosened up a little bit and let the guests, not be sheltered in place. And we also have taken protocols where anybody who's out of the shelter for more than 2 hours, when they come back, they have a change of clothes and they shower right at the front. And we make sure that they've been writing CTA, whatever they've been doing in the city, that we at least have kind of the showering protocols for their safe return. And then one of the things that had to shut down during the pandemic was our community engagement program, which is where we do outreach to people who are living on the street and street-based individuals. And we do this in partnership with St. Paul's UCC that's on the corner of Orchard and Fullerton. And we were, over the past 2 Sundays, we're able to stand back that program back up with meals, and with even this last week with showers and case management support for those guests. And also with phase 3, just in the past 2 weeks, we've had all staff return to work and working on site at the shelter. Before, we really tried to have a skeleton crew and tried to have staff who could do virtual case management and support the staff virtually. We had them off-site, but now we're with phase 3 slowly kind of getting back to having full staff on site, giving our guest support. That's a quick overview of what's been happening at LPCS. Before I hand it off to Andy to tell you what's happening today and going forward and what our plans are going forward, I just want to say, my brief 4 months sort of taking the helm of the shelter has really, I've been inspired by the resiliency of the guests and the strength of the guests. And I was just amazed that we were still able to get folks housed and to, continue our mission in this time of pandemic. And I was just overwhelmed by the amount of support that the community has shown and volunteers have shown to the organization. Like we had most every dinner and lunch and most breakfasts filled by volunteers, and it made it so much easier on the skeleton staff to be able to just pick up those meals and serve our guests without having to worry about cooking. And like the outpouring and the support that we've gotten, I don't know how we would have made it through it without your good work. So I'm going to stop talking and hand it over to Andy, who I'm so excited is the new interim executive director, and he's going to talk a little bit about what's happening today and going forward. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you, Lydia. And I think that's a great note to start my remarks on, is just how inspired I've been over the last month that I've been, transitioning with you by the work of our staff, by the commitment of our guests to continue seeking out permanent housing. And I have to say, your work as our interim executive director over the last 4 months has been truly inspiring on behalf of the whole LPCS community. We're so grateful that you're sticking around, but we're really grateful that you've been such a help to us over the past 4 months. You've been an inspiration to me personally, and I know the entire staff. I think many of you know and recognize me, but I wanted to take a moment to introduce myself first for those of you who don't know me. I've been volunteering at LPCS for 10 years. I started out, like many of you, as an overnight volunteer at the Fullerton location, really getting to know our guests and being changed by their stories. I was incredibly inspired by the commitment and dedication our guests show towards overcoming, in many cases, very difficult circumstances to find and achieve permanent housing. I later was a dinner volunteer. It was an exciting opportunity for me to bring my friends and my family to experience the services that LPCS provides. And then I served on the board for 3 years with Lydia as we undertook the effort to build a new facility, a permanent home here in Old Town, to support our continuing operations in Lincoln Park. And just last week we celebrated a year in this new facility. I know it probably feels like a decade, but we have been open in this beautiful building for a year, and it's a really exciting time to be a part of LPCS. As Lydia mentioned, graduations are still happening. Amidst this pandemic, we still are regularly ringing the bell downstairs to send our graduates off into permanent housing. Mary and the team shared a video last week of one of our guests graduating to housing. If you've not had a chance to see that video, I really recommend taking a few minutes to watch it. It will change your day. It'll change your week. It was truly inspiring to be part of it. I also, want to echo what Lydia said, that there's been a true outpouring of support from the community. And my vision for LPCS as we move forward is to not only think about how our neighbors have supported us through this difficult time, but how LPCS can support the neighbors who have been supporting us. And there are two quick programs that I want to highlight. The first is our Green Team. So if you're familiar, our Green Team is a neighborhood beautification project that we run out of our facilities. So we hire guests and we pay them a living wage to go out into the community, collect litter, collect debris, beautify the neighborhood that we're lucky to call home. And this has always been a big part of what we do at our Fullerton facility, and we're really excited to bring this to the Sedgwick facility and to Old Town. The other thing is, I've been really touched by all of the meal volunteers who have not only dropped off home cooked meals, but have used this opportunity as a chance to share and support the restaurants who have supported us in many cases for decades by, purchasing meals that can be dropped off to LPCS. And, today there was a particularly touching story over at our Fullerton location. So it was Sarah's birthday. Sarah's one of our new meal volunteers, and Sarah called up Joey's Red Hots to ask if they would help provide a lunch on her birthday. And Joey said that they wouldn't provide her a discount or anything like that. They were going to cover her lunch donation for free. And so we had an amazing lunch down at the Fullerton location, a great birthday celebration for Sarah. And, you know, I think it's just really an illustration of how we have relied on support, not only from individual volunteers, but restaurant partners. And so people are always asking me, what can I do to help out? What can I do to help out? Well, what Sarah did was awesome, but another way that you can support LPCS is by supporting those who support us. You know, next time you're thinking about getting a meal out, call Joey's Red Hots, call one of the dozens of other restaurants that have supported us in this truly difficult time. And definitely get in the chat and wish Sarah a happy birthday, because I think she's tuned in tonight. I'm going to hand it over to Jamila shortly, but I just want to underscore how much we are a volunteer-led organization. This pandemic has been really difficult for us because we have had to cut back on our programming because we are running a bare bones staff. And so we're really excited for volunteers to come back on site and help us teach classes, do job coaching for our guests so that we can turn more of our guests into graduates. And I really want to encourage any of you out there that have ideas for new partnerships or collaborations that we can do, reach out to me. We want to be creative. We want to be innovative. We want to be the best place in the city to volunteer and support. And so, you know, we really are looking to make a community response, because I think it would be an amazing story that we could tell coming out of this pandemic if we got stronger as a community and we made this kind of community response to homelessness. So I'll hand it over to Jamila. It's really exciting to be a part of LPCS.
Hi everybody, my name is Jamila Chaudhry and I'm the volunteer coordinator here at LPCS. I'm going to give you some updates on the volunteer front. But before I do so, I'm going to echo the sentiment of both Andy and Lydia, and I want to extend an enormous thank you to all of our volunteers, our donors, our partnerships that were created through the pandemic. I want to give a shout out to Clifford Law, Chef Dan and his group, Sally Fletcher and St. Paul's group, and the many, many, many other individuals and groups that helped us keep our guests fed throughout the pandemic. From the beginning of shelter in place, which was March 17th to present day, we received 481 meals across both of our locations. That is incredible. We did the math, and that came out to roughly 12,025 individual meals. I mean, we are just completely blown away by the outpouring of support. And to echo Lydia's words, it really took, you know, some of the stress off of our staff on site, knowing that that was one less thing on their plate, pun intended, that they had to worry about. So thank you so much. I know that many of you are eager to get back on site, and of course, we really want to see all of our volunteers back on site as well. So I'm excited to announce that come phase 4 of the city reopening plan, we are going to allow our volunteers back on site. Now, as you can imagine, this is going to look a bit different, and we have to slowly phase our volunteers back to limit the traffic per day in and out of our facilities. So we're going to start with allowing our dinner groups back on site in groups of 5 or less. There will be several other procedures and protocols put in place to ensure the safety of our guests, all of our volunteers and our staff. So there will be more details to come as we get closer to that phase 4. Right now, it looks like the city is on par for July 1st to reopen. So LPCS is looking at July 6th, just right after the holiday weekend, to start having our dinner volunteers back on site. With that said, we still need our meal drop-offs. So breakfasts and lunches, we want to keep those rolling in. If you've been enjoying doing that, please keep them coming. And of course, if you're a dinner volunteer and you've been on our schedule and you just don't feel comfortable coming back on site just yet, that's totally okay. We are going to have a hybrid of drop-offs and cooking on site for quite some time, we imagine. So please serve at whatever level of comfort that you feel. There are other ways to get involved at LPCS as a volunteer. You may have heard about our PPE kit drive that we recently launched. Actually, within 3 days of launching it, we received enough resources to hit our goal of 300 PPE kits. We were not expecting to hit that number so quickly, so thank you to all of those participants for donating, and a huge shout out to the Logan Foundation for your generous donations and making us hit our goal so quickly. So similarly, we want to launch a welcome kit drive. And what that's going to look like is we want to collect items that will be put into a welcome kit that we give to new guests upon intake. When guests first arrive at our shelter, they must wash their clothes, and sometimes they may not have something to change into. So what we would like is to create this kit that has items for guests, such as a sweatshirt and sweatpants that they could change into and be comfortable, and other items that they could use within our facilities that they may not have themselves, such as shower flip-flops. So we want to collect these items, and if you're interested in finding out more about this or any of the opportunities that we're going to have, learning about the details, please visit our website at the Get Involved tab, and we will have everything updated there. Additionally, we're going to be sending out some follow-up communication, so please be on the lookout for that. And of course, don't hesitate to reach out to us directly if you have questions about anything. Lastly, I want to give a quick shout out to our volunteers who took the time to teach some virtual classes during the pandemic. We were able to complete some virtual financial literacy courses. We were able to do some virtual mental health support groups. And these were all things that were so imperative in keeping our guests engaged during the pandemic. So thank you so much to those volunteers. I know that there's many of you out there who've expressed interest in teaching courses as well. So once we get that back up and running, we'll be sure to follow up with you and get you on the schedule. So before I turn it back over to our Mary, the moderator, that just rolled off the tongue, I want to say one last thing. At the beginning of the pandemic, there was so much uncertainty and apprehension around what's going to happen. Are we going to have enough resources? Are we going to be able to make it? And I know that we all experienced the pandemic in different ways. But the one constant that LPCS experienced was your unwavering support. It was so clear from the get-go that we have such a strong community standing beside us. And I just want to thank you all for all of the donations, the meals, the eagerness to help, just any willingness to jump in where you can. So thank you so much. And I'll give it back to Mary, the moderator now.
Thank you, Jamila, for that warm re-welcome. So we just want to let you guys know we're going to keep rolling along here, but please leave questions that you have for any of the panelists in the chat box. Just make sure that you click to all panelists and attendees, and we'll get to those at the end of the presentation. We're really excited to have some of our community partners here who are helping us address homelessness throughout the city, but also right here in our neighborhoods in Lincoln Park and in Old Town. So I just want to share a little data with you to set the stage from the City of Chicago 2019 Point in Time survey. One night a year, the city conducts a survey of how many individuals are experiencing homelessness who are either living in shelters or street-based. This does not include individuals who are experiencing homelessness who are living with friends or relatives. So in 2019, when they did this on January 24th, there were 5,290 people living in shelters or on the street. And something that I thought was really interesting is that more than 11% of those individuals, especially those who are street-based, were residing in Lincoln Park or near North, so the Old Town area. That's actually a staggering number. And that's to remind us that, homelessness is a citywide problem and something that we're all trying to work together to address, including here in our neighborhood. So certainly LPCC, OTMRA, and the Kennedy Forum are helping with that. So I want to turn it over to Robin to talk about the Lincoln Park Chamber of Commerce.
There we go. Sorry about that. Hi, everybody. My name is Robin Hammond. I'm with the Lincoln Park Chamber of Commerce. I'm the vice president there. The Lincoln Park Chamber actually opened in 1947. I know what you're thinking. I haven't been there the whole time. But our president, she has actually been with our organization for the past over 20 years. And the interesting thing is that Lincoln Park Community Services has actually been a member of the LPCC since 1997. So longtime members. One of our mission as an organization is to provide a leading force, an active hand in the community's ongoing growth and evolution. And one of our mission points is to be an inclusive community, to make sure that we are doing as much as we can for all of our community members. And one of the great values of having Lincoln Park Community Services in our neighborhood is that they're able to provide services for our homeless residents and people that are living in our neighborhood. And they're also a great resource for us as for our businesses. If there are questions, if we need questions about resources, advice, guidance, it's wonderful to actually have an organization in our neighborhood that we can call anytime and they're able to give us answers. And also that we can refer people to them as well, that they know that they're in good hands, they'll be well taken care of. And if they aren't, able to find space there, that they'll be referred to other shelters in the city. So we're forever grateful for our partnership and we're so happy to have them here. One thing I'd like to say, I'm pleased to be with you all today. I'm appreciative. I also live in the neighborhood, so I'm appreciative of all that you do as a resident as well. I would also like to say major kudos to Lydia and your team, Mary. This is an astounding time. And, to see this nonprofit organization be innovative, responsive. It was one of the first virtual fundraisers that I saw, and it was fantastic. So congratulations to you and your team for all of the amazing work that we do. We continue to be inspired by you, and we're so happy to have you as our neighbors.
Thank you so much, Robin. We're so happy to work with you guys. And actually, I think this was like the day before we went into shelter in place. Lincoln Park Chamber of Commerce had an amazing Women in Business event. And we were really excited that we were still able to attend this, and Lincoln Park Chamber of Commerce chose us to be the organization that received part of the proceeds from that event. So you guys have just been really wonderful supporters and always attuned to individuals experiencing homelessness in the community. So next, I want to turn it over to Ian from Old Town Merchants and Residents Association.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ian Tobin. I'm the Executive Director of the Old Town Merchants and Residents Association. Real quick, I want to thank you all for organizing this panel and then echo what Robin had to say. Yeah, that was quite a time to be an interim executive director. I can only imagine you probably got more than you bargained for, but you certainly did a fantastic job. So kudos to you on that. Our organization, the Old Town Merchants and Residents Association, has we only have a very recent partnership with LPCS. When we first all met was in 2017, when we learned that you all were coming into the neighborhood and you were looking at a site on Sedgwick. And you met with our Zoning and Government Relations Committee and laid out exactly what you were proposing here. Then we all saw the value immediately. Our board of directors got behind it. And we knew that it was going to be an uphill battle based on perceptions of what an organization like LPCS would be doing. And sure enough, we had a number of NIMBYs in the neighborhood, and our organization, along with your previous executive director, Dan Hula, we worked very, very hard to try to break some of those misconceptions about what LPCS does, to talk about the good work that you're all doing. And I remember testifying at City Council about your organization and why it's a benefit for the neighborhood. Our organization has been very happy to financially support you as well. Last year at our members reception, we made a contribution to LPCS, and that was giving some of the proceeds from the Wells Street Art Festival, which is our largest fundraiser every single year. And we're very, very appreciative of the generosity that LPCS has shown us over the last year with your new fantastic facility. You've hosted a number of roundtables that we've done with other area nonprofits, just so we can all figure out what ways that we can all support each other and just sort of share ideas as well. And then additionally, you hosted us for a visioning workshop earlier this year for a new park that we're looking to design. We brought residents into your facility and we were able to get ideas from them about what this park could possibly be. And we very much appreciate the generosity that you presented there. So the Old Town Merchants and Residents Association, the name implies that we're one half Chamber of Commerce, the other half is neighborhood association. It's a really interesting tightrope to walk sometimes, but when you have the wind to your back, it really is rewarding that you're able to bring both sides of a community together. Our organization also administers a special service area, which is a local taxing body. And with that, we have a number of vendors that operate in the neighborhood that provide services to the Old Town district. And we focus very heavily these days on making sure that what vendors we do hire are helping people re-enter the workforce. So for instance, we work with Clean Slate, and they are an organization, Robin is nodding because I'm sure you all work with them as well. They do litter abatement and graffiti removal in the Old Town neighborhood. And in addition to that, they offer job training, experience, life coaching, and then really everything that they need in order to move from where they were and move on to some other sort of stable chapter in their lives. And we're very happy whenever we have the opportunity to use that lever of power of the SSA in order to help be part of that change. Then just really quick, our organization also, our Zoning and Government Relations Committee lately has focused on socially conscious economic development is a word that's been thrown around just a bit. An example is we have a major employer that's coming into the neighborhood. We've been working with the Near North Unity program with them to make sure that they're targeting people that are re-entering the workforce in order to work for this new major employer that's coming onto Wells Street. And we're looking forward to future plans, partnership that we can work together on. Andy, you and I have talked a little bit about how we can be using the Green Team as a partnership to help beautify the residential streets in Old Town, since the commercial district is taken care of at the SSA. We also want to see and explore different partnerships of how OTMRA can help refer people to LPCS that might be on the street that are looking for resources, looking for help. We want to be able to help be part of that conduit. And yeah, we're really looking forward to any other opportunity that our partnership can help change lives.
Thanks, Ian. I just want to jump in really quickly and thank Ian, both you and Robin. We would not have the Sedgwick facility if it weren't for both your organizations, your unwavering support at Old Town Merchants, and then the zoning hearings to have the chambers of commerce stand up and speak on behalf of our organization. We absolutely wouldn't have the Sedgwick facility. And part of when we were thinking about the building and what we wanted to do to honor Old Town was it was really important for us to have art on the building to honor the art festival. And so that's a major feature of the building, trying to, honor what is, a rich tradition of art festivals in Old Town.
So yeah, thank you both so much. And I'm really excited to have Cheryl here from the Kennedy Forum to just talk with us a little bit about individuals experiencing homelessness in our communities. Robin said something a couple of weeks ago that I thought was pretty interesting. She said that when shelter in place was, pretty strict and there were a lot less residents on the street, she felt like the visibility of people experiencing homelessness in Lincoln Park was a lot more apparent. And it seemed that, the businesses really were starting to see the visibility and wanting to know how they can help, especially if they have individuals that come into the store or they find someone on the street who might be in crisis. So Cheryl is going to talk a little bit about what individuals can do in that circumstance. Thanks, Cheryl.
Great. No, thank you. Thanks for having me. So yes, I'm Cheryl Potts. I'm the Executive Director of the Kennedy. The Kennedy Forum was started by former Congressman Patrick Kennedy, who is the son of Ted Kennedy and is a person who's openly living with bipolar disorder and substance use disorder. And he started, when he left Congress, he decided to focus his efforts on a nonprofit movement to eliminate stigma and discrimination towards people living with mental health and substance use disorders. So the Kennedy Forum really has a significant platform when it comes to state and federal policy, as well as working here in Chicago. We're located in Old Town. Our offices are located in Old Town, but we have a special interest in working with Chicago as well. And where my personal background, I'm a person living with a mental health disorder, and I used to work in homeless services for people living with HIV. So for a lot of my career, I worked in where health and homelessness intersect, and so the intersection between mental health and homelessness is very near and dear to me for both professional and personal reasons. I'm sure you guys know of the statistics. Some of the things that astound me is that for being one of the richest countries in the world, there is not a single state or city or county in our country where someone can work 40 hours a week on minimum wage and afford a 2-bedroom apartment at fair market rent. There's not one city. We think it's just a Chicago problem, but think about these small towns. Even there, working with minimum wage, you can't afford to support a family. And when we look at that and we look at the combination with how people living with mental health have been treated, we can get an understanding of why things are so dire. Back in the 70s, when they deinstitutionalized the mental health facilities, they had this, very humane idea, an appropriate idea of we don't want to institutionalize people. Don't want the one flew over a cuckoo's nest, terrible, terrible living conditions that these institutions were. But nobody had a better idea than to dump people on the streets. And that's what happened, is people went into homelessness or they went into the correction system. And so today, people look at this and see, this intersection between homelessness and mental illness, and then also involvement with corrections, and think, well, these are violent individuals. We need to stay very far away. We don't want to see people. And the reality is that only 3 to 5% of violent crimes are committed by someone with a serious mental illness. And in fact, someone living with a serious mental illness is 10 times more likely to be the victim of a violent crime than someone not living with a mental illness. And so I'm not surprised that there are a lot of homeless individuals who migrate to communities like Lincoln Park, because it's a relatively safer environment for them to be sleeping under a viaduct and things of that nature. So, I really commend what you're doing, and I know that none of this is really surprising to you at all. But I think what we're doing, as a society, we're seeing that there's a big gap in affordable housing. Organizations like yours and organizations I used to work with are trying to impact individuals who are living through homelessness and mental health disorders. But still only 50% of the people who need or seeking treatment can access mental health treatment. And for substance use disorders, it's even starker. The estimate is that about 10% of individuals who are seeking treatment are able to get treatment when they seek it. So we see us being the safety net system for individuals, and also the conduit to which people can get into treatment. And so a couple of resources that I wanted to put out there for you as individuals who are on the first lines for our community members who are seeking services and who may be in crisis, there's great things in our backyard. NAMI Chicago, and I will also put these together and make sure I get them out in an email to you. And in fact, Mary and I had talked about putting together a one-pager resource, so I'm committed to doing that. So don't worry about writing down all the numbers, but the NAMI helpline, NAMI Chicago has a helpline that is very, very useful and very connected for the city of Chicago and getting people into treatment. Also Trilogy, which is located, they have many locations, but one of which is on the north side. They also have a hotline that operates 24/7, and it's a crisis line. And also, 311 is an option for services, but if you are experiencing someone who is in a crisis and who you think might be at risk of harming themselves or someone else, one of the most important things I want to talk about that not many people know is that if you call 911, if it gets to the point where it's escalated and it needs to go to 911, please request a crisis intervention trained officer. We have had a lot of dialogue, especially over the last month, but in Chicago, we've been having this dialogue for many years about how the police department can assist and support individuals living with a mental health disorder. After the deaths of Laquan McDonald and Quintonio LeGrier, one of the offshoots that came of that police consent decree was that officers, we would invest in more officers being trained in crisis intervention. And there are many great officers who are trained. It is a 40-hour curriculum. It is done by NAMI Chicago. And these individuals are able to de-escalate situations instead of seeing things escalate into violence. A lot of times the violence, of course, being perpetuated against the people who they're trying to, who they should be helping. So that is a really good resource. And I don't, I apologize if I don't know if LPCS does this. In the housing facilities that I used to run there, transitional living, we had a relationship with all of the police departments, so they knew that if something came from our address, they automatically sent a crisis intervention trained officer and not a regular beat officer. So that's also something that I want to put forward there. So those are some resources. I'm going to help Mary with this one pager, but I'm also happy to take any questions that people might have.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. This is great. Like we just learned through Ian that the Kennedy Forum is right here in Old Town. So we're just so lucky to have community partners that we can work with to strengthen our services. And in fact, we just heard from Peter from Northside Housing on the chat. So that's another great organization that we can continue to build partnerships off of. I'm gonna actually, we have a couple of questions from the audience, so thank you. Actually, I'm gonna put this question out for Lydia or Andy to answer, although Sean, our wonderful program director, would be a good person to answer this too. But she asked, when the guests come and they stay with us, are they evaluated for mental health concerns? And also, do they set goals for what they want to accomplish?
Yeah, so certainly our guests are assessed by our trained case managers to, we operate under a philosophy of, we call it on track. So guests, when they come into our facility, our case manager makes an assessment and places them into a combination of 3 tracks, we call them. The first is focusing on substance use recovery. The second is focusing on physical and mental health. And the third is focusing on employment. And a guest could be in any combination of those. And we have kind of, you might consider it a playbook for guests who are in each of those tracks, getting them referrals to the appropriate providers. We have an excellent partnership with Heartland Alliance Health. We're working with them to increase the availability of our telemedicine services with their trained psychiatrists on their staff, because certainly we've seen that mental health is a bigger part of helping people realize permanent housing in this time.
Thanks, Andy. We have another question from Kathy. This is a really good question. She's like, I'm wondering where in our city you're able to place LPCS graduates when they ring the bell. Seems like fewer and fewer places. Where are we finding homes for our guests? Andy or Lydia?
I can answer that one. So our case managers are amazing, and they have, the city does open up permanent supportive housing units. So when we built the building on Sedgwick, there were 20 units that were permanent apartments that you could get qualified to have a permanent studio apartment with us on Sedgwick. And our case managers are all over what PSH units are opening up in the city of Chicago. And we also have really good relationships with landlords who, do Section 8 housing, with relationships with the CHA and, senior assisted kind of housing. I will say some recent graduates have moved to Division and Clark for the Mark Twain studio apartments. The one last week, a couple of folks have been able to move into that. Those are studio apartments on Clark and Division that are, subsidized affordable units that some of our guests have gone to. And, the manager there of that apartment building knows that our case managers have all the paperwork done, ready to move in. They want to get the units leased up as quickly as possible. And so they come to us like, who do you have that you guys are great. You have all the paperwork ready to go to make it easy for all the, HUD requirements or CHA requirements. So that's part of, I think, why we're really effective too, is we seek out relationships both with landlords and with permanent supportive housing groups that lease up units.
And I'll just add that the city has renewed efforts to find more permanent supportive housing units following the onset of the pandemic. So all Chicago working together to end homelessness has something called the Expedited Housing Initiative, where they've identified, I think it's somewhere along the lines of 100 landlords with more than 1,500 units that are available to people who are currently being housed in the YMCA shelters, in the Shield housing that's been opened up as a result of the pandemic. And their goal is to house 1,000 new PSH units in the next 6 months. So while we do still have an affordable housing crisis, there is some pretty positive news on the provider front in terms of opening up more units for permanent supportive housing. And that's what PSH is permanent supportive housing. Kathy?
So we want to end on time, which this is already the end. We promise to keep this short. So we're just going to go really quickly through each of the panelists, and we're just going to ask you, what are you most looking forward to in phase 4? Actually, I just want to say, I saw Reverend Blakey just noted that case manager Julie Thompson is amazing. That is very true. She is amazing. So anyway, I'm just going to go through each of you really quickly. I'm going to call out your names as I see you on the top of my screen. What are you most excited for our city as we go into phase 4? Robin, I'll start with you.
I'm excited to see people in the physical world. I enjoy all your faces here, but I'm excited. I'm excited to have dinner outside. I'm excited to see friends again, and I'm excited to see our cities, our neighborhood and our business districts start bustling again.
Thanks. Lydia?
All right, I'm going to be very deep. I think that the pandemic and the recent, issues with police have really started a discussion in the city about, like, are the police the right ones to be addressing homelessness? Is a guy with a gun the right person to be addressing folks who have mental health issues or are struggling on the street? And I think LPCS can really play a role in that discussion. I've had lots of experiences with the police in my short tenure as interim executive director, and it wasn't always the right answer. Even with crisis intervention team, wasn't always the right answer. And so I would like to see how we can partner with the city, with the police department, to have our amazing case managers like Julie be people that are responding to mental health and homeless issues rather than a guy with a gun.
Yeah. Good. Agreed. Ian?
I would say, yeah, similar to what Robin is saying, I really am looking forward to seeing our neighborhoods full and lively again. Obviously, 50 people or fewer full, but either way, our business districts are our downtowns. It's really where our neighborhoods get to put their best foot forward. They're the places that define us, that make us, our neighborhoods, who we are. And I'm really looking forward to being back, immersed in all of that again, because, that's why we do what we do, is because we are nerds for downtown, and I am needing my fix of it.
Very nice. Cheryl?
Great. Well, first, can't wait to go to the Church of Lydia and say amen to your statements, because there's so much work to be done. And I don't even start. So that's why I love meeting people like you, all of you, to help us go to that extra level. And I'm really interested in getting back to human interaction again. I'm actually a graduate, a 2-year-old, and it's so interesting walking around the neighborhood because she can't, 2-year-olds want to talk to people and they want to pet dogs and they want to do things, and it's such a interesting thing to watch her essentially be did by all these people as she walks by. And I can't help but take that to heart, and just can't wait until people can start having human connections again. So.
Okay, Jamila?
I'm excited to meet all of our volunteers. I'm newer to this role, pretty much right at the start of the pandemic. So I've only talked to volunteers on the phone or through email, and I feel like I know so many of you from the constant communication, but we've just never actually met face to face. So I'm really excited for that.
Okay, and last but certainly not least, Andy.
I think that the thing that I'm most looking forward to for myself and for our guests is hopefully providing more of a sense of autonomy. I think the past few months have been very confining for all of us in terms of there are things that we'd like to do and that we're not able to do because of the health and safety situation. And I think it is, living in our facility, sometimes people want to continue to be street-based because coming into our facility means having to follow a set of rules. And it's a supportive place. It's a place that is encouraging of guests, but it can be very hard to give up that autonomy. And, I feel personally like there are things that I can't do, but I don't have to sign in and out or get permission to leave the facility. And so I have a lot of empathy for our guests. I know they're looking forward to phase 4. Being able to just, go for a walk without permission is something that means a lot to them. And, I think that we'll always be in this together as a community, but providing more spaces where people can have autonomy and individual freedoms while still remaining safe. I'm really looking forward to that in phase 4.
Thank you. That was a great way to end. And I just want to quickly thank the people behind the scenes here. That's Abby and Lexi from our development team who really helped make this happen. And also shout out to Sean, who's been putting really great information in the chat box. He's, certainly an expert in mental health as well. So you can always tap into him as a resource. you know, we've said it before and we'll keep saying it, you know, you guys have been so helpful. You have been the backbone of keeping us going and making sure we haven't skipped a beat in our work throughout this. And we're going to continue to need your help because this is a recovery phase and we've got a lot of work to do to ensure that our guests are safe and that they have access to the care, both physical and mental health, that they need. So we ask you to continue to support us how you can. I think we just put in the chat box the links to our Get Involved page where you can, you know, learn about all the ways to get involved volunteering both on and off site over the next several months, and certainly the link to donate and support programs like the Green Team, like our community engagement program, and everything else that we do. So that's it. That's all we've got for you today. Thanks for spending your Thursday happy hour time with us. And we will look forward to seeing some of you back on site on July 6th. So have a great night. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.